Have you ever watched professional wrestling and wonder what their contracts typically look like and how they're taxed? Well, let's break it right down for you. My name's Mike Mellace. I'm with Pink Harbor CPA. I'm a certified public accountant. Please make sure to smash that like button right now and subscribe to this channel for more content just like this. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's break down these contracts. First, most professional wrestlers are classified as independent contractors. So they get a 1099 NEC, which stands for non employee compensation, at the end of every year. The wrestlers are typically classified as not being an employee of the professional wrestling organization, such as the WWE or the TNA or AEW. They're independent contractors, meaning they're not entitled to things like health benefits or retirement benefits or paid vacation. And typically, employers like the WWE typically control the creative direction of the contractor, which would be the talent that you see. So they control their creative direction, their schedules, their appearances, and all the legal framing that goes along with that. So they're getting a 1099 NEC, just like a general contractor that works out there. Next, the time and renewal of the contract. The term period is usually for about 3 to 5 years. That's typical in this industry. And there's typically a renewal option clause, which is in favor of the professional wrestling organization. So say WWE signs a big name brand, and WWE would typically say, we can renew this contract every 3 to 5 years for another 3 to 5 year period. However, if we choose to let you go, we can let you go, and there's no mandatory opt-in for the talent. There's also injury clauses. So we often see a talent get injured, and they're out for a long period of time. Well, someone like TNA, they don't want to give up that time in that contract because they're out for 6 or 8 months. When an injury happens to a professional wrestler, that typically freezes the contract, and therefore that contract gets extended 6 to 8 months until that talent comes back again. Compensation. Now, there's a downside guarantee. There's typically a minimum amount that the wrestler will be paid, whether or not the wrestler actually wrestles. So they never go on TV. They still get a standard dollar amount. We saw this big time with the WCW completely overpaying for talent that never showed up, never did anything, just to have them on name brand with WCW, and then they couldn't go to the then WWF, which then became the WWE. So they paid for talent to stay home. Most of the time, though, a contract is very minimal for that wrestler, and the wrestler gets paid extra when they actually show up on television or in PLE events. So they get per appearance fee. So in addition to maybe they get $500,000 a year just to be under contract, every time they go on television, they get bonus dollars. Every time there is a PLE, they get more bonus dollars. And they typically get a percentage of their merchandising sales too as well. So when they're selling dolls, they're selling trading cards, they're selling t-shirts such as the John Cena one that I'm wearing right now, they get an extra percentage of that merchandising sales that happen. They can also get bonuses, escalating clauses. So if they wrestle for a certain period of time and they do not get injured, that could hit an escalating clause. If they get selected to do a major PLE like SummerSlam or WrestleMania, they could earn major bonuses for that. It all depends upon what's in that contract. Next, there's exclusivity. So we said that a professional wrestler is an independent contractor, but are they really independent? Because if the WWE signs a talent, the WWE does not want to go see them wrestle with TNA or see them wrestle with AEW. They want them only on WWE programming. So that contract says that you are exclusive to us. Now, how does the WWE do that? Well, first, it's a plain out exclusivity clause. But let's say the wrestler wants to go wrestle in another organization at that time. Well, the talent, their name is typically owned by the agency that they contract it with. So let's say, for example, you are Stone Cold Steve Austin. Well, your name is owned by WWE. So even if you go to AEW, AEW cannot call you Stone Cold Steve Austin. That typically marginalizes the impact it would have if you went to AEW is a big turnoff. We've seen this happen with the Big Show, where the Big Show was the Big Show in WWE, and then he leaves to go to AEW, and the Big Show name goes away, and he wrestles under his real name. The wrestler also typically signs off on all their intellectual property rights. What that means is every time a match is recorded, every time they appear on a podcast, anything they do with that talent name that they're under, the wrestling organizations such as TNA or AEW or WWE, they own that intellectual property. So every time they continue to re-show that again, that agency that signed them earns that money. Now, typically, the talent may get a small percentage in a royalty of what's left to go to the talent every time that is viewed and aired, but that's a very small percentage as compared to what the actual wrestling promoter makes on that. There's a conduct and morals clause. So, basically, don't be a rear end. Because if you're bad, you can get canceled by the wrestling organization. We saw this happen with like the likes of Hulk Hogan when he made racial comments. And Hulk Hogan was taken completely out of the WWE, WWF Hall of Fame. Everything was removed from him on all their television networks. He was completely canceled, and his Legends contract was immediately canceled. So, if you're in some type of nefarious situation, at the end of the day, the company wants to make sure that they protect their own personal images and brand, and they will cancel your contract out. Travel expenses. Typically, travel expenses may or may not be covered by the wrestling organization. For newer talent, the wrestling organization usually picks up the travel expenses of the newer talent because they're not quite making all that much money at all at that point in time. As the talent starts to grow and they sign on the bigger contracts, then the talent picks up all their costs for all of their travel, their hotel stays, their car rentals. Remember, they are an independent contractor. They get paid on a 1099 NEC, and there's typically also no per diem unless it's being previously negotiated. The termination. The organization usually maintains the right to terminate that contract at any point in time within 90 days' notice. So again, these are contracts that are very, very typically in favor of the wrestling organization, not the independent wrestler themselves. Now, let's get into how they file a tax return. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, please smash that like button and subscribe to this channel, because very soon I'm going to have an interview with a WWE Hall of Famer. How a tax return is typically filed by a professional wrestler. They are typically either a single-member limited liability company, and in which case they would file a Schedule C, or they're an S corporation if maybe they're part of managing other talent along with them. Why are they a limited liability company or an S corporation? Well, liability protection purposes. These wrestlers are out there doing very difficult things and could cause a great deal of injury to other people. So the limited liability or the S corporation protects them from being personally liable and personally sued. Remember, we talked about the 1099 NEC form. That reports the gross that was paid to the wrestler during the course of the year. Well, we report that gross on, if it's a Schedule C in the gross income line, same thing in an S Corp in the gross income line. And there we take expenses. We had talked about sometimes the wrestler is responsible for all their travel or their meals, anything that is reasonable and necessary in with creating that professional wrestler business. Their outfits that they wear, maybe braids that they could put in the hair that matches their talent, maybe makeup work that gets done to them before the match, maybe working out in the performance center or anything that they have to work out in the performance center and practice. Airfare, lodging. All of that are reasonable and ordinary expenses. Same thing, probably their workout routines, their workout regimens, their vitamins, anything that puts their body into the physique that they're being billed as. That's very important too as well. All the mileage that they drive. They are an independent contractor. So no difference than if you were a painter, a general contractor, if you were an accountant, if you were an attorney, whatever you may be, if you're an independent contractor. Any expenses that you have that are reasonable and necessary for that business, you are going to write off. They file a 1040 tax return just like you and I do. They file a Form 1040 with a Schedule C showing that limited liability company. And at the end of the day, they pay taxes very similar in that way that you and I do. My name's Mike Mellace. I'm with Pink Harbor CPA. Very soon, we'll be having an interview with a WWE Hall of Famer. You don't want to miss out. Please make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to this channel.